All right. So, everyone remembers that moment at the Oscars, right? Back in '74, the streaker.
Oh, yeah.
Right as Elizabeth Taylor's about to give out the award for Best Picture.
Yeah, Robert Opel.
But there's so much more to his story than just, that one infamous moment.
So much more.
We're going to deep dive into that today.
Absolutely. This is not just some random prankster. His life is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Especially considering all the social change that was going on back then.
And it's crazy to think that, streaking itself was actually like a cultural phenomenon in the early '70s.
It really was.
What do you think it all meant?
Well, I mean, it's complex. Some people saw it as, part of the sexual revolution.
Right.
Just, liberation and freedom of expression.
Yeah.
But other people saw it as rebellion, right? Against the Vietnam War, Watergate.
It's almost like it was both, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This kind of tension between, breaking free, but also still trying to fit in.
Totally.
Hmm.
And Opal's life really captures that tension perfectly.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, starting out, he was like the opposite of a rebel.
Right. Boy Scouts, debate team, like total all-American kid.
Speechwriter for Ronald Reagan's campaign.
Yeah. Talk about a contrast.
So how do you go from that to, becoming the Oscar streaker?
It seems like his rejection from the Peace Corps was kind of a big turning point.
Really?
Yeah, because he was gay. So you can imagine, I mean, back then.
Yeah, definitely not accepted.
Right. So it seems like that clash between, who he was and what society expected.
Kind of woke him up.
Yeah, like he couldn't conform to a system that rejected him like that.
So it was after that he
Right.
really embraced gay liberation.
He started working as a photographer for The Advocate.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, really prominent gay rights publication back then. And then
Yeah.
he even started editing this magazine called Finger, which was, pretty risque, really focused on nudity and stuff.
Huh. So he was using nudity, almost as a form of activism.
You could say that. I mean, he saw it as a way to, challenge hypocrisy and, make people rethink how they see the human body.
I read that he even, crashed a city council meeting, right?
Yeah.
In Venice Beach.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
They were debating a ban on nudity.
Shows up in a jumpsuit and then, bam, flashes the peace sign.
No way.
Asks the police chief, is this lewd?
He just, played with people's expectations, right?
Literally. Total provocateur.
But, that kind of approach, I mean, that also caused some friction even within the gay rights movement.
It did, yeah.
How so?
Well, for example, his Mr. Penis persona at the LA Pride Parade.
Oh, right.
Yeah, some people saw that as way too confrontational.
He was definitely not afraid to push buttons,
Oh, definitely.
even if it meant being ostracized.
And that complexity, right, that just gets even more intense when you look at his move to San Francisco in the late 70s.
Oh, right. That's when Harvey Milk was, becoming
Mhm.
super prominent there.
Right, exactly. San Francisco was like this hub for the gay rights movement.
And their lives, I mean, Milk and Opal's, there's, some interesting parallels.
There are.
Yeah.
They both started out kind of conservative, but then they both became much more radicalized over time.
Opal was just always, pushing things further, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Opened his gallery, Fayway, right in the heart of the San Francisco leather scene.
Wow.
I mean, talk about a subculture known for pushing boundaries.
And wasn't that around the time he started showing Robert Mapplethorpe's photography?
It was. He was actually one of the first to exhibit Mapplethorpe's work.
Interesting.
And again, Mapplethorpe, very controversial, exploring themes of sexuality, and this is all happening against this backdrop of some really turbulent events.
Right, like the Briggs Initiative,
Uh-huh.
the Jonestown Massacre.
The assassinations of Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone.
San Francisco was like a city in turmoil.
It really was. A lot of anger, a lot of fear.
And how did Opal react to all of that? Did it, affect his art?
If we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you can see how all these events really fueled his outrage,
Mm.
especially the Dan White trial.
The trial for the murders of Harvey Milk and Mara Moscone.
Yeah. And, the Twinkie defense.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was just outrageous. It just fueled so much anger in the gay community.
And Opal, I mean, he didn't hold back in expressing that anger.
Oh, no, not at all. He actually staged a mock execution of Dan White.
What?
Yeah, at the Pride Parade.
That's intense.
Oh, yeah, it was shocking, controversial, but, he wanted to highlight those raw emotions.
Take a statement.
Absolutely. And, he even sent a letter to Dianne Feinstein.
Really?
Yeah, who was the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors at the time, asking for her support for his mock execution.
Wow, that's something else.
And, at the same time, His personal life was also becoming more complicated. He started selling PCP, started a relationship with Camille Grady. She was this punk rocker with this Letterman alter ego named Jack Savage.
Sounds kind of wild.
It was a whirlwind, but unfortunately, things were also starting to take a darker turn for him.
Yeah.
His drug use got worse and he started acting, well, erratically.
Hmm.
And then he got mixed up with this guy, Dana Chalopman.
Okay.
Not a great influence, to say the least.
Sounds like he was living on the edge in more ways than one.
Yeah, he was. Really talented artist, passionate activist, but
Fuck.
yeah, those demons and, his choices, they caught up with him.
But, well, he was murdered, right?
Yeah. July 8th, 1979, two guys broke into his gallery, demanded drugs and money, things escalated, a shot was fired, and Opal was killed.
That's awful. I mean, to think that his life ended so violently.
Yeah, it's tragic. And what's even worse is how the media covered it.
Really?
Oh, yeah, especially the mainstream press. It was all about perpetuating these negative stereotypes about gay people. I mean, some of the headlines are like, gay militant slain in porn art gallery.
Oh, wow. Really painting a picture, huh?
Yeah, reducing him to a caricature,
So sad. They couldn't see past his sexuality to see him as like, a complex person.
Exactly. And it just added to the pain and anger for, everyone who actually knew him. Camille Grady, his girlfriend, she was adamant that it wasn't just a robbery gone wrong.
Why did she think that?
Well, she said that one of the gunmen actually threatened her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, told her, like, if you identify us, you'll be killed.
So she suspected there might be more to it, like a conspiracy or something.
Yeah, and it didn't help that the police seemed, I don't know, dismissive of the whole thing.
So what happened?
Well, Dana Kreisman, remember him? He was seen leaving the detective's office right after the murder. And Maurice Keenan, one of the killers, he actually escaped from jail.
No way.
Yeah, got caught again later, but still, it just adds to this whole, sense of mystery around the case.
That's like something straight out of a movie.
It is, isn't it?
So do you buy into those conspiracy theories?
Hard to say for sure. Definitely a lot of unanswered questions, strange coincidences. But without concrete evidence, it's really just speculation,
Yeah. What about the trial for Maurice Keenan? Did that clear things up at all?
That trial was, well, strange. Keenan's wife showed up trying to, cast spells on the jury.
What?
Yeah. And Keenan himself was apparently high on LSD during the proceedings.
Sounds like chaos.
It was. And what's really ironic is that one of the jurors actually admitted to being biased against Opal.
You mean because he was gay?
Exactly. And that just, I don't know, it cast a shadow over the whole thing.
It's like even in death, his sexuality was used against him.
It's really sad, and it overshadowed the truth. Keenan was most likely driven by, drugs and desperation. Probably wasn't some big homophobic conspiracy, but that narrative got lost in all the noise.
So in a way, Opal became this symbol, this martyr.
He did.
But it's like they forgot about the actual person,
Yeah, that happens a lot with historical figures, especially those who were, considered outside the mainstream. People want to put them in a box, hero or villain. But Opal was neither. He was just a person,
A complicated person.
Yeah, with his flaws, his passions.
And that's what makes him so interesting.
It is.
He was funny, outrageous, sometimes self-destructive, but always driven by this, belief in the power of art.
And his story reminds us that art can be this tool for social change, right? To challenge people's assumptions.
Like his Oscar streak. I mean, yeah, it was shocking and kind of funny, but it was also about something bigger.
Freedom, self-expression, the right to be yourself without shame.
And that message, I mean, it's still relevant today.
Absolutely. In a world where everyone's chasing viral fame, it's worth remembering that real change often comes at a personal cost.
Opal's 15 minutes turned into a lifetime of activism, of fighting for a better world.
And that fight is still going on. Opal's murder, no matter the reason behind it, it shows just how vulnerable marginalized communities are,
Makes you wonder if things have really changed that much since the 70s.
Yeah, it does.
We have more ways to express ourselves, but challenging the status quo can still be dangerous.
It can. And Opal's legacy reminds us that we can't take freedom of expression for granted.
It's easy to look back at someone like Opal and try to categorize him, right? But he was so much more complex than any label.
He was. Full of contradictions.
Yeah.
Playful one minute, philosophical the next.
That's what makes him so relatable, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. We all have those contradictions within us.
And Opal's story, it's like it encourages us to embrace those contradictions, you know?
To be ourselves, even when it's hard.
It's not about being famous, it's about being true to yourself,
And using your voice to make a difference.
no matter how small.
He definitely made an impact.
He did. And it's sad that it took his death for people to really start listening.
Yeah. But hopefully, by sharing his story, we can keep that legacy alive, you know? Inspire others to speak their truth.
There's a statement that Opal wrote before his death.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
It was published in Drummer magazine.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. It's so raw and honest, you know?
He just doesn't shy away from who he is.
Like, he doesn't care what society thinks. He's owning it.
He embraces being an artist, a sea, an anarchist. His whole life was art, a performance.
And that takes guts.
It does. He truly believed in himself and his message, and he knew that eventually people would pay attention.
And they did. But it's heartbreaking that it took his death for that to happen.
Yeah, but even in death, you know, his art still challenges us. It reminds us that the fight for equality isn't over.
So how do we ensure that people like Robert Opal aren't forgotten? That their stories are told the right way?
Well, I think it starts with engaging with history, honestly, you know? Acknowledging both the good and the bad.
Moving beyond those simple labels.
Right. Embracing the complexity of people's lives.
That's what we try to do here, you know?
Yeah.
Dive deep, explore the nuances, let the stories speak for themselves.
Because those stories, those human stories, they connect us.
Yeah. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Robert Opal, I keep thinking, what would he be doing today?
Good question.
I mean, in this age of social media, with everyone trying to get attention,
Would he be an influencer?
yeah, or would he still be on the fringes, you know?
Using his art to provoke us, make us uncomfortable.
It's hard to say, but it's an interesting thought.
It is. Opal's story reminds us that it's not about seeking the spotlight, but about staying true to your vision, you know?
Speaking truth to power.
And using your creativity to make the world a better place.
And that's a legacy worth striving for, right?
Absolutely.
To make the world a little brighter, a little more open-minded.
To see the beauty in our differences.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine him like on Twitter, right?
Oh, he'd be all over social media.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Using it all to spread his message, provoke people.
I wonder, though, would he have been, like, embraced? Or would they have tried to censor him?
Probably a little of both, right?
Yeah, it's tricky.
He'd definitely have his fans, the ones who get it. But he'd get pushback, too, for sure.
It's like you need attention to get your message out.
Uh-huh.
But that same attention can be used to shut you down.
It's a tough balance. Opal understood how to use spectacle
Mhm.
to make people pay attention, but he knew there were risks, too.
Makes you wonder, you know, have things really changed that much since the 70s? We have more ways to speak out now,
We do.
but it can still be dangerous to challenge the status quo.
Oh, yeah. And Opal's story, I think, reminds us that, you know, freedom of expression, the right to be different, those are things we can't take for granted.
It's easy to look back and, you know, try to put him in a box. Activist,
Yeah.
artist,
But he was more than that.
way more.
Yeah, he was a bundle of contradictions, wasn't he?
Outrageous 1 minute, then super insightful the next.
And that's what makes him, you know, feel real.
Human.
Human, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest takeaways from Opal's story is that it's not really about fame, you know?
It's not.
It's about having a vision and using your voice,
To make a difference.
even a small one.
He definitely left his mark, that's for sure.
He did, even if it took, you know, his death for people to really see it.
Yeah. Hopefully, by talking about him, we can keep his legacy going.
Inspire others to find their own voice.
Exactly.
It's been fascinating, you know, really diving into his life.
He was quite a character.
Yeah. So much more than just that one moment at the Oscars.
It's amazing how much depth there was to his life. Most people just remember the streak.
So to our listeners, you know, don't be afraid to dig a little deeper into the stories that grab you.
You never know what you'll find.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that curiosity alive.